All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The time change threw me off, so I apologize that the minutes and agenda came out late. So sorry about that. So the first item on the agenda is approving the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. So next on the agenda is discussion of the draft comprehensive plan chapters. We have started a web folder where we've been uploading the revised draft chapters, and we have one new chapter that we'll be posting today, which we haven't gone through with this group yet, and that's the economic development chapter. So I'm going to share my screen. And this is going to be chapter 5. So this chapter starts off with going through an introduction, the existing demographics and socioeconomic conditions. So fortunately, with the timing of this comp plan, we have the benefit of the 2020 census. So we're able to include some very current information about the population and the changes in population growth. We've tried to present things in a very clear format, so you can see the breakdown here of the ages in the population. Your population's currently around 49,000 people. We go over the median household income, average household income, population trends. And we do some comparisons where appropriate to Rockland County as a whole. We also looked at some journey to work data, or how people use transportation and how that's changed since 2010 to 2020. As you can see, the majority of your residents still travel by car. Your travel time to work, the bulk of the population is within the 5 to 30-minute range. Although you still have a few that are longer, and those are likely people that are commuting to the city or commuting to White Plains during peak traffic hours. We've also looked at your housing occupancy and how that has changed. In terms of your percent occupied, that has declined a little bit since 2000, but it hasn't changed, or actually it's declined since 2000. It continued to decline. So you do have some housing vacancy. The majority of your housing is owner occupied, which I think is something that we were anticipating. That has not changed much over the past 20 years. And this is a distribution of the number of people per household, which has stayed fairly consistent with what it was in 2010. We used a program called Esri Tapestry, which is it's a GIS-based program that looks at the demographics of your community, and it assigns a lifestyle model to it and characterizations based on the age of the population that is college educated, and it identifies the types, just generally the types of businesses and economic uses that would be attracted to your community. So your higher percentage is what's considered Pleasantville, which is a typical suburban community in the Northeast, and like slightly older demographics. You have a lot of empty nesters, but you do still attract some younger families. Other ones that popped up for you were savvy suburbanite, top tier, and urban chic. And then you do have a fairly substantial portion of golden years, so that's your older demographic, independent and active seniors. We tied all this demographic information into downtown, some ideas for downtown revitalization strategies and programs. We did look at your 2018 Pearl River TOD opportunities analysis, and we reported on that within this document, as well as your 2018 Orangetown bike study. We reported back on some of the views that were identified in the community survey. A lot of what we heard in the community survey and in the public workshops we've had so far are that strip malls should be discouraged. There was a desire to see more infill type of development and to not develop open space. In terms of commercial development within the hamlets, generally people wanted to see things stay fairly the same, and with the exception of allowing some infill and some contextual development, but not to see a drastic change.
Vision spelt wrong.
Oh, thank you. We'll correct that.
I saw Jane. I'm like, do I say it or do I just wait?
Yeah,
All right.
Pet peeve of mine.
Sorry. Thank you. We will definitely correct that. And then, so what we've done in this last section is we've broken down the various goals that we've been identifying, discussing over the past few months, and we added some strategies to them. So, and we added some more description on why we want to advance those types of strategies, or why we think it's appropriate. So some of the things we suggested were a marketing campaign to showcase the town as a unique place to live, work, and visit. To advance some placemaking activities. You have some things that you're doing right now that could be built on, like your Pearl River Day. So activities like that get people downtown, that get people to patronize local businesses, and that create a sense of place. Establish a local development corporation is something that the town may want to consider. This is a not-for-profit corporation with the mission of reducing unemployment and increasing job opportunities. Create an Orangetown economic development plan with the goal of supporting businesses, supporting workers, and supporting the quality of life. And look at attracting new businesses and varying types of businesses to broaden the business offerings and protects the town's tax base. So it is important that you do continue to attract businesses so that the burden of the taxes is not solely on the residents. And then also, just as I mentioned earlier, activating the public realm. So this is tied to some of the ideas that we've already presented in the traffic and transportation chapter, and looking at evaluating the short and long-term economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on businesses in Orangetown. One of the things that people have really seen over the last few years is a tendency to work from home more than people were before the pandemic. So you may have people who used to commute to the city every day, but now they're only commuting 1 or 2 days a week. And how can you capture those residents? And maybe they are looking for a flexible office space in the downtown, or are they patronizing some of your local cafes during the day more often than they previously were? And how can you build on that? So we'll correct that typo and then post this to the web folder for the board to take a closer look at. And once you've had a chance to make any additional comments, we can provide it to be posted on the town's website. So are there any questions on that document before we moved to the next item?
No, I don't have any questions on that.
One of the things we did do based on the last meeting is we updated the community character chapter, community character and historic resources chapter to add the historic routes. So that's been done. So we made those edits. In the transportation chapter, we made edits there based on the comments from the last meeting. So that is also available for review. I don't think there were any major changes to the introduction chapter. And then the next chapter that we did make some changes to the land use chapter, but the big thing that was missing from those edits were potential land use map and also the future land use map. So I have drafts of those for discussion purposes today. And based on this discussion, we'll carry this through and bring it into the chapter. So I'm going to share my screen for that. So one of the things we've been talking about is how to do this contextual infill development and where to strategize that type of development. If in particular, how to create some more housing opportunities within the town to meet the needs of the existing residents. One of the things we heard is that there's a lack of affordable housing, and there's not as many options for aging in place or for younger residents to come back and find a place to live in Orangetown. So what we wanted to focus on were where those nodes of moderate density housing could potentially occur. And one of the things we wanted to look at is where could you potentially have mixed use development. So that could be something where you have a mix of retail and residential, potentially in a hamlet area. And also where could you have what's referred to now as the missing middle housing. And what that means is it's the type of housing that is between a single family home and a mid-rise apartment building. So we're not talking about a city. We're not talking about, you know, skyscrapers or large buildings. We're talking about things like duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, things that are at a similar scale as a single family home. And in some of these cases, and I have some photos of some examples, some of these townhouse like little groupings can look like just a large single family home from the street. And these can serve to provide a diversity of housing options for your entry-level buyer, as well as a place to downsize for people who wish to stay in the community. So what we've conceptually proposed here are what we're showing highlighted in this darker mustard color. This color here is potentially where there could be some missing middle housing. So those are the townhouses, the triplexes, duplexes, and then the orange would potentially be the mixed use areas. We tried to highlight properties that were, you know, existing commercial areas that looked like it could have the ability for some infill or redevelopment. So this is what we've highlighted in the Pearl River area. We've highlighted this area over here. This was an area that was identified in the Route 303 overlay district, and that's an area we've highlighted for some mixed use. In Orangeburg, we've highlighted a couple areas for potential mixed use and some missing middle. And the idea here is these could be areas that could be transitioned from the more developed commercial areas in these hamlet centers as you get, you know, and as you make your way out of these cores before you get to the larger single family homes. This could be the transition between those areas. And then also down here, right at the border of New Jersey, there are some larger strip developments down in this vicinity that have the potential to be renovated or upgraded to include some potentially mixed use development. See if I missed any. Nope, no, those are the ones that we had highlighted. Are there any questions about this map before I do have some photos of what I'm talking about, just so people could see.
Yeah, I think that would help because it's very, some of them, I don't even know where, like, I mean, the Pro River is a little bit easier, but I don't even know where that is.
Okay. So I have photos of the type of development that we're talking about. I can pull this up on an aerial. Let me see. Let me just stop sharing for a second here. So we could look at would you rather look at those areas on like a
But
Google
yeah,
Earth
it's just
first,
kind of, I mean,
or-
either that or, maybe if I had time to kind of look at it, but real quick, it's kind of confusing to exactly where it is.
Okay, sure. Let me just pull that up. Oops. Okay, so the one section on Route 303. So this is Route 303. I'll start with that. There was the one section in this general vicinity. Where you have some existing commercial development. Further down by the New Jersey area. I hope I'm not making anybody too dizzy. Oh, went too far. So this is an area where you have a lot of strip commercial development that's set back from the road. There seem to be a number of vacancies in some of these areas. So it did seem like there was certainly the potential for redevelopment and upgrading of these sites.
So just that, I guess that's the Pan Plaza. That's where we are already in the process of redeveloping. We're going to be getting a Lidl or a Lidl supermarket there, hopefully very soon, but
Yes, and they're also rehabbing the existing shopping center there.
Okay.
for that one particular shopping center you showed. I mean,
All
there's
right.
others
So
in
for
the
that
area.
particular one,
That's good because
That's
all those
good.
people would have a place to go food shopping.
yes. So there are potential, so that's good to know. There are other ones along this corridor that could use a facelift.
Yeah, there's there's a few down there that could use a little facelift.
So adding the ability to do mixed use can sometimes make it a little bit more enticing for a developer to want to renovate or replace what's there today. And then what's the other one? Oh, and I skipped over Orangeburg, so let me go back to that. Sorry, I'm navigating too many windows. So it was generally this area of Orangeburg where you've got some larger, kind of near town, not far from town hall, where you have some larger properties. Where you may have some potential for some infill. Um, and then the last one was Pearl, was just generally within the vicinity of Pearl River. What we can do for the next meeting is to go a little bit more into detail about this and have them like some more side-by-sides of these areas. And it's also something that we planned on discussing at the public workshop. And then in terms of the types of developments that we're talking about, just to give you some photo examples. Hold on a second. So this is an example of a more modern stacked townhome. This is in Westchester. It's a 2-story building. It's a typical entry-level type of townhouse. That's it from the front. In a more urban area, and I'm not sure that Orangetown wants to go this high. This is an example in White Plains of a infill site that's 4 stories. I'm not sure if Orangetown is looking more at like a 2 or 3 stories. But it is an example of how you can infill and allow for parking underneath. This is another townhouse example. It's only 2 stories from the front and then 3 on the side because it's built into the topography. This might be a type of construction that you would see in Orangetown with your varied topography. This is another example from Westchester of a more modern type townhouse. Also from Westchester, in a more industrial area, but it was made to look like the former industrial area of this particular community. 3 stories. This is an example of an infill development or a retrofit on a major corridor. It's on the Boston Post Road. And what they were able to do when they renovated this plaza was add some little seating areas by the street. They were able to reskin the building and were able to add in some additional landscaping. You know, it was a tight parking lot, and you may have this kind of thing come up in Orangetown. It gave them the ability to add some trees. This is all pervious pavers. And it also gave an opportunity to increase the buffer from the road to the parking lot. I did notice, like along Route 303, there are quite a few parking lots that are almost right up to Route 303. And if there was a way to increase that buffer, you could get some more street trees and landscaping. This is also, this is a national housing developer. They've done a lot of work in Westchester. I think this is probably a little taller than what you're looking for in Orangetown again, but just to give you an idea of some types of styles that can be integrated to give it a more residential appearance.
Ashley, if I could just point out that we do have Chapter 43, Article 13 is the Route 303 overlay.
Yeah.
They have provisions in there to try to increase the buffer. But one of the things that we have found at the planning board level is it's very physically restrictive, the sites to really incorporate what the vision was for the Route 303 overlay. So when you're reviewing these things, if maybe you want to look back at what they had proposed back when that was adopted.
Yeah, and one of the things that we noticed was that it didn't seem like it was headed towards a retrofit as much as it was headed towards a total redevelopment, which may not always be feasible. So if there was some more provisions for retrofitting.
Right. So what we're finding is, I mean, the sites, there's very few that are undeveloped at this time. So when they do come in to upgrade or expand, because of the location of the existing structure in relationship to 303, incorporating all the features that are part of the Route 303 article of the code, we have to send them to the zoning board for variances from that section because
Right.
there's just not enough room. So in thinking about your recommendations, I would, just flag that for you, that while the Route 303 overlay district on paper looks beautiful, it's been hard to actually fully implement it when the applicants come in.
Right. No, I understand. And that's why I wanted to highlight some things like this, because this is something that you can squeeze in a tight space. So maybe there needs to be some other options on the table that are more practical for that area.
Right.
Just another example of a townhouse development. This one was designed to look like historic Scarsdale. And I thought I had a photo of a quad, but it's not popping up. So. Okay. I think that was all I wanted to cover there. We'll make those maps available to the board after this meeting. So if you have any additional comments before we present them at the public meeting. Okay. And then next up is the public workshop. So Sachi, did you want to go over any of the details now or?
Sure. This current workshop is also designed as similar to the previous workshop. In the previous workshop, we had discussed some high-level recommendations, and now we have a much more detailed recommendations for all the chapters. I think you should also have recommendations that we'd sent along at the end of March to AKRF now with you to review for the resiliency and parks and open spaces chapter. So what we've gone ahead and done is taken all of those actions and strategies and laid them out in boards. And this time, I think the way we're dividing up the time is in order to maximize the time, since participants have already done the Dotmocracy exercise once, we hope to open up the Dotmocracy exercise before our presentation so that as people come in, they can, review all the boards that are on display and keep putting their dots of, whether they approve or not approve of some of the recommendations for each section. One thing that we've gone ahead and done and added to this time is a handout, a much more detailed handout, which speaks to, and I can share my screen real quick. So here you'll see in this handout for each section, we've provided, what is the primary action or strategy and some more detailed information about that explains this strategy. So what the participants will be able to do is they can vote their priority in terms of S, M, or L, meaning that whether it's a short-term priority for them or a medium-term priority for them or a long-term priority for them. So they're going to have this handout which expands on the information that is already on the Dotmocracy board. But when we also go to the breakout session, they'll have this handout which includes all of the recommendations that we have presented to you thus far, or which are available to you, which are currently under review by you. So I saw some questions in the chat one asking if participants will have access to all the recommendations. One thing that we can do is, if you would like to post this even before the these handouts, which concisely capture all of the recommendations in a bullet point format and are easily digestible, we could provide this to you a week in advance, maybe by the end of this week or on Monday, so that it can be posted on the website. And as you send out another invitation, a digital invitation, they can read this handout digitally, and we will bring photocopies of it at the prints of it at the meeting, which will allow them to, then rank their priorities in terms of short, medium, and long term. We also think that this ranking is going to help all of the participants and the comprehensive plan and the CPC determine what the how to kind of think about implementation and next steps, or just next steps in the comprehensive plan, and figure out what are the items that we want to take on first. Because obviously there are so many actions and strategies, and this will just help prioritize what's first for the town to take on. So we've also gone ahead and translated a number of the recommendations that are place-based onto maps for really large maps. For so in the one of the challenges that I'm having on my board is that the Adobe Creative Suite is working very slow with the so the images are not loading because these are very high resolution maps. So this is an example of what the Dotmocracy boards look like. So each of these 10 are on the handouts, and there's some additional information for each of these 10 strategies, and they can rank these strategies on the handout itself, which they will have throughout the workshop, and they will submit at the end of the workshop to us. And in addition to sorry, this is not opening up. At the table itself, they are going to have maps that are a lot more detailed, but are much larger, like 2 feet by 3 feet maps, which detail out some of the recommendations that are place-based. So for example, this map, as soon as it loads, you'll be able to see, calls out all of the properties in parks and open spaces that we are suggesting should be acquired in order to protect. And it also suggests some connections between that should be strengthened. So, that's all I wanted to share right now. I think you'll see all the details printed out. But both the materials, the drawing materials, as well as the workshop materials, include pretty much the entire draft recommendations of all the chapters up to this point. And after a 20 minutes, approximately a 20-minute, I would say now that we begin Dotmocracy, as people start to arrive, they will have enough time to review all the so they'll have like a good 30 to 40 minutes if they arrive a little early to go over the recommendations by themselves. And then when they come to the table, they'll have another 4 breakout groups for each topic. They'll have another 20, 25 minutes to have a more sort of subjective or a detailed discussion of their top priorities. And then we'll wrap up with a quick report back from the 5 themes that we've that the tables are going to have. And we're going to take all of this feedback, prepare notes, and in addition to the feedback that we receive from the CPC, we'll use the feedback from the community to update the draft recommendations up to this stage.
I know one of the questions that people have is and I know we're not there yet, but the draft, when will the draft be available for public viewing? After this is what you're saying.
So do you mean the draft of all the recommendations, Teresa?
I think that they're talking about the actual draft plan. Like
That
we've been
I'll
doing the
leave
chat,
to
we're doing all these
Ashley
chapters and you're
to
reviewing
answer.
it. Will that be available before our meeting on the 28th? Or is it more, you're looking to get more information on the 28th to include in it? Is that?
Yes, and all of the outreach materials include in a more concise format, like as you saw in the handouts and
Right.
in the maps, all the recommendations. But whether or not to include the draft chapter for the community, that I think, Ashley, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, I'll take that question. So I think all of the chapters that the committee has had a chance to go through, if you're comfortable that they're ready for public review, then we're happy to provide them to be posted on the town's website in advance of the meeting. A lot of the recommendations, as Sachi said, are reflected in the workshop materials. So, it's just to be clear that these are drafts, and we do expect that we will be making modifications to them based on what we hear at this public workshop. But I think it would be helpful for the community to see it in the context of the draft chapter as a whole.
Okay, so I would just say, to the committee themselves, if they want to take one last look or whatever, so that we make sure that what goes out as the draft has at least been nothing glaring that we have a problem with. So if you want to give us, what's today, Wednesday, till Friday, if you want to take a look, if there's any issues, let Ashley or Allison or myself know.
We still have one more chapter, right? That is
Yeah,
not
so we do have, there are two chapters outstanding. So there's the one which is the sustainability chapter, which Sachi and I will coordinate whether or not we can get that one up in advance of the meeting. And then the last one is chapter 7, which is basically a summary chapter of all of the recommendations and implementation measures of the previous chapters, and it does identify the timeframes and the town staff or board that would be responsible for leading that recommendation. And that is something we certainly expect would be further developed based on what we hear at the public workshop, because the timing component is very important to what's supposed to come out at the public workshop.
Could we just talk about this? Just a thought. Typically, I think that, and I'm just thinking out loud, do you think it is useful to give a lot of information for consumption before the public workshop? Because then it's just 2 drafts of after having received community feedback. So it's like draft 1, what from the CPC, and then draft 2 after community feedback. Or do you think it might be beneficial to maybe just have the handout because that information is digestible, and then or not overwhelming with all the chapters, have the community workshop, and then maybe within a week or 2 update everything, and then have a full draft of the comp plan ready for just putting it out there for consideration, that what do you think, what according to the CPC might be a better strategy with the community?
I think the more you can give the public, as soon as you can, the better, within reason, obviously. I don't say we have to have a handouts but either have it available on our website or something for people who want to go looking for it. I mean, it may be a lot to give out at the public hearing, may be overwhelming with the other information, but if they know they can go even beforehand, it would even be better, I guess. And again, I'll say draft, it's in draft format. We'll be very clear it's a draft.
Okay, yeah. One more request I had was if you have had a chance to review the memo that we sent through AKRF for the for chapter 6. If there are any comments on the recommendations, could you please also review that?
We can put that in the web folder so it's all in one place.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay.
Probably a good idea. I
I
can't lose
realize-
it. I can't lose it then.
So the next, just confirming that we have a meeting scheduled for
10 a.m.
next, yeah, 10 a.m. next Thursday to go over the public workshop details.
On my
So
calendar.
yeah, that'll just be, you know, walking time to time what's going to happen, the detailed agenda.
Okay, so I think we've gone through the full agenda. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
The facilitator meeting in the morning, is that just, I have it as just Teresa and I. Did you want the whole committee or?
I think that's what we were planning on doing based on what we did last time.
Okay, and then we need to go over, I guess, in advance of that, just what materials you need, you know, tables and chairs, things like that, how you want it set up.
Yeah, I think we could probably do the same setup that we had last time. Sachi, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I think the setup we had last time would work, and we'll come and help set it up in advance.
And I did email everybody the URL with the login information, so you all have that now.
And all you CPC, there's going to be a test. So I want to make sure you read it. I'm going to be quizzing you to make sure you read what's in the folder. They didn't laugh, Sachi. You laughed, none of them laughed. They looked at me like, yeah, okay.
I
Okay.
did look, but right now there's only the 4 chapters up there for us to look at.
Yeah, I'm gonna be posting the economic development one in there, and then so there's a total of 7 chapters. So the one that would be
Easy
missing.
reading. You had nothing better to do this weekend. Easy reading.
So there'll be a total of 7 up
There'll be a total of 7.
by the end of the week, I guess then. So right now there's 4.
There will be 5 by the end of today. We will shoot for having 7. I don't know if we're gonna get it by the end of this week, but we will shoot for having all 7 before the meeting.
And there'll be a memo for chapter 6, which pretty much captures all the recommendations. So at least that, and that's easy read. That'll be an easy read.
The cheat sheet. We need the cheat sheet.
Yeah, similarly for chapter 7, which is the summary table, we might post that as a Word doc for now. That would be a little easier.
Yeah, at least that way we'll all be clear that no recommendation is out of line, you know. And then if any detailed writing, we can always update that later after the community workshop.
Alright, well-
Ashley, do you want to set the next meeting, the CPC?
Yeah, we
meeting?
should do that. That way we can announce it at the meeting next week. Do we want to go back to the morning time or is the afternoon better? I don't have a strong preference.
I'm a morning, I prefer the morning, but I'm good with you. I think there was a conflict, so that's why we did it in the afternoon, but you know, I'm flexible.
Yeah, if it's gonna be a Wednesday, it all depends on which Wednesday, because both Eamon and I have, and Rick have PRC meetings and also IUC, so it doesn't leave much.
The 8th, I'm sorry, the 11th or the 18th work for me in the morning.
So May 11th in the morning, we have PRC.
18th, good?
It works for me. Sachi, does it work for you?
Yes, it works for me.
Okay.
The 18th,
10 a.m. I think is what we had before. Does 10 a.m. work for everyone on the
Works for
18th?
me.
Okay, great. That'll give us a chance to go through the comments from the public meeting and make adjustments in advance as well. Okay. So I don't have anything else on the agenda unless anyone else has anything to discuss.
Can I just ask a question, because this has just recently came up and I made me start to think about it. So like if we're, and I don't know if this is even just comp plan or whatever, but we have a smoke shop that just opened up in town, which apparently is allowed by all accounts. It's, it's just, whatever, but it's somewhat near an elementary school. So like we wanted to change that, like is this part of the, like, how does that work with if it's, I mean, obviously if it's there, it's allowed, we can't change it, but we can change it going forward.
Yeah, you could change it going forward. So you could have a recommendation in the comp plan to limit or ban smoke shops. And
Yeah.
then after the comp plan is adopted, you could update your zoning code to specifically prohibit them. And
Okay.
if you wanted to, you could include a grandfathering or an amortization clause, which they can be kind of complicated. It requires notices, but you could have a sunset condition on them.
Okay, I just, it just kind of popped up, and who even thought about smoke shops, so that they was even such, whatever. But anyway, so I was just curious that thinking about how as we may change our code, how it plays in with existing businesses. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
something we want to think about. But okay, totally unrelated to everything we were talking about.
All right. Well, I'm going to add that to my list for the zoning chapter,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, and we'll post that other chapter and get back in touch with everyone and the recommendations from chapter 6.
Sounds good. Very good. Do we have to make a motion to close or anything?
I think formally, yes.
Okay, I make a motion to close. I'll do like I do at the town board meetings. Jane seconds. Oh, Jim seconds. All in favor? Okay.
Right.
Have
Thank
a-
you, and
have a
see
good
you
day,
all in
everybody.
person next week.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. See you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.